Good evening, good afternoon, good morning. Welcome everybody from different parts of the world. My name is Joaquina Rodriguez and I'm joining you from the UK. I work in the University of East Anglia and it's my great pleasure to be saying the first words of welcome for the book launch of Woven, the collective memory of the Chaparraluna Women's Peace Building Network from Colombia, which is one of the products of a collaborative research process and project we carried out for 2 years in Colombia between different organizations, different partner organizations. It was the University of East Anglia, University of Ibagué from Colombia, and Eureka Educativa from Bogota took the lead creating the project. But this was a project jointly carried out with community organizations from Southern Tolima, in total 9 community organizations and 8 schools. And it was a project that was aimed at trying to develop collaboratively peace building strategies from the bottom up, with schools and community organizations to strengthen their own processes of peace building, which they have been carrying out for decades in Colombia, as many of you already know. And it's probably why you're here today. So it's my pleasure to welcome you to this book launch. We're very proud of this product. It's one of the products that was the result of our intention to strengthen community initiatives for peace building. It's one of the products that was the result, and we're going to talk in great community detail about this later. But before we start, although I already started giving some preamble, I want to just take you through the motions of the session, just some key pointers. Please see in the bottom ruler of this page, you will find the icons for using Zoom. Many of you probably already know, but some of you might not be aware of how to use simultaneous translation. So there is a little ball called interpretation. And in this little ball, you can choose the language. I'm currently speaking in English, but you can choose from that. We're going to be holding all this session in Spanish. So I'm going to switch into Spanish shortly. So you have to choose the English version. We have a wonderful simultaneous translator called Caitlin, and she's going to translate into English everything for you. So please do choose English if you are an English speaking person. And then from then on, we're just going to be having a very short presentation by myself. Then I'm going to pass over to the network who are going to explain themselves how they produce this wonderful book. And then to finalize, we're going to have a commentary by Penny Plowman, a research associate from the University of East Anglia, who works a lot in capacity building among other groups with women's networks in different parts of the world. So we've asked her to take a clinical eye and an affectionate eye into this product and to feedback her views on this and how this book can be relevant to other parts of the world, because we've already started disseminating this product in Colombia, but it's our intention with this book launch to also make it known beyond Colombia. So Penny Plowman is going to do us the big favor of commenting for 10 minutes, around 10 minutes, her impressions of this book. So I'm going to switch into Spanish now, and I'm going to give a proper introduction to our session and to situate this book in the context of our project. Buenos días, entonces repito.
Good morning. Entonces, I'm going to repeat my warm greetings and welcome. My name is Joaquina Rodriguez, and it's a pleasure to be with you all, accompanying you today. We're going to take just 5 minutes to
holding all this session in Spanish.
Place the book that we're going to be talking about today in a broader context. And this is a huge achievement because this is the translation of the original into English, because it's the first time that I think the Women's Network will have a publication in English so that they can be heard and known outside of Colombia. So this project is an international project that was called, we're including this project, which is called School, Territory, and Post-Conflict, which looks to strengthen a peace culture on a very local level in southern Tolima. And this is a project that began in 2018 together with Eureka Educativa, which is a non-governmental organization that looks to transform conflict in school areas. This is located in Ibague, in the capital of Tolima. And this is also carried out with the Universidad de Anglia del Este, which is in Norfolk. And so this project arose out of a binational call for applications between the British government and the Colombian government in 2017 to strengthen peace-building processes that began out of the signing of the peace agreement between the FARC and the Colombian government. So this agreement generated a lot of expectations to be able to achieve stable peace in Colombia. And the British government, together with the Colombian government at that time, was very interested in carrying out research that could help this transformation. So this project arose in this way with the School, Territory, and Post-Conflict, which looks to strengthen grassroots organizational initiatives and spaces in the schools and the communities in different regions of Colombia that could contribute to multiply peace-building efforts under a perspective, as the government has said, of territorial peace-building. So this territorial peace-building is a very important concept because it means that there's a concentration of the idea of peace-building as something that is carried out from the state or in the capitals from the government, but it's also to strengthen efforts in the regions that are being carried out by the communities themselves. And so our project is School, Territory, and Post-Conflict precisely looks to generate pedagogical strategies that are developed jointly with the schools or with organizational initiatives in southern Tolima so that they could last over time beyond the agreements that were established between the FARC guerrillas and the national government. So this is how we are able to identify different local institutions or entities. We are working with 8 schools in 4 municipalities in southern Tolima, which are Taco, Chaparral, Planadas, and Tiro Blanco. And we are working with 9 organizations in those 4 municipalities. One of the community organizations that we worked with is the Women's Network with Chaparral, which is a fantastic women's network, a strong, solid network. They do fantastic, incredible work. The Chaparral Women's Network has been a very interesting experience. We learn from their vision, their commitment, and once again, this full commitment to peace building from a very specific space. And this is a space of defending women's rights and the rights of young girls and women. This is something that's often invisible in the peace process, but has suffered huge impacts on all levels. And so we're going to be able to hear the voices of the women of the Chaparral Women's Network. So this book arose out of a research process that we carried out with them that looks to reconstruct their historical memory, not just to help have a dialogue with other organizations that could help to develop a pedagogical strategy between organizations and schools for peace building, which could be useful in southern Tolima, but also to help increase visibility for their own peace building process. And so based on this beautiful research process that we have carried out, in a very organic manner, it was decided that it would be important and valuable to publish the result of this process. And this has led to the book. that you will be able to learn about through the voices of the women, the members of the Women's Network. I'm not going to continue talking because I really want you to hear the voices of the women of the network. And so you can hear about this process, this project, and I'm sure it'll be very interesting to hear from them about their work and the value of this process, and also where they hope to generate an impact with this book. Women of the network. So for me, it's a pleasure, as I mentioned, to share this space with you all, because we know that this publication will have an impact beyond Colombia, not just in Colombia, but we think it has contributions for other women's network who are trying to carry out similar work. So Jimena, Sol, I'm going to open up this space for you so you can share a bit about the book, and we will hear about Baptize the book in this moment. Thank you so much. I think your microphone is silenced. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. We can't hear you very well. Can you please sit closer to the computer? Sorry. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. My name is Maria Jimena Figuero, and one of the delegates for the Peace Network. The interpreter can't interpret with the sound quality. We're going to read some different fragments from the book that have to do with our social process and our efforts as a network.
Hazme, Señor, instrumento de tu paz, donde haya oración, siempre amor, donde haya siempre perdón, donde te tiempo, donde haya sombras, siempre luz. Antes de ser consolado, quiero saber consolar. Antes de ser yo amado, quiero saber premiar esta canción de cómo aprender. Cuando estoy dando recibo, cuando perdono también. Quiero lograrme en Cristo, solo vivir para Él. Esta oración que siempre la llevamos por delante.
This is a song that we always sing when we begin our community work, and it allows us to call upon our goddesses to give us wisdom and to illuminate our path forward with the organization. To talk about who we are as the Chaparral Women's Peace Network, we are an organization. It's a territorial local organization located in the south of Tolima, in the municipality of Chaparral, Chaparral, Tolima. And we also work with women from Chaparral, Ortega, Granada, Tierra Blanco, San Antonio, and there are 5 municipalities of Tolima. We've been working in these municipalities for the last 17 years, specifically with women to fight for our human rights and to have an impact on different decision-making spaces. Something it's important to note is that we are intersectoral organization because there are indigenous women, there are indigenous, Afro-descendant women who are victims of the armed conflict, and young women. These are the different sectors that make up the group of women in the network. There are 25 grassroots organizations that make up the network based on sorority, sisterhood, our collective work. These are values that guide our organization. And today we feel that we have a lot more support because we have been able to reflect our organizational efforts in this book. And this is a book that's in thanks to the efforts of the women and all our leaders. We always commemorate the participation of the women, and we want the new generations to know about our efforts, our work, and that they can apply it to their local organizations. It's very important that we're able to translate it into English so women in other countries can learn about our process and use our experience and hopefully empower many other women. So once again, we are second tier organization as the Chaparraluna Women's Peace Network. We are working to build peace from the regions with the voices of the women. So we feel very happy to be in this space today. Thank you for the University of Ibagué and all the women and organizations and other entities. So like the Angle University, who have supported this project and this book and have allowed us to really reflect our memory in this book. So thank you. And please, whenever you want, you can come visit us in Southern Tolima in Chaparral. Thank you. Okay, it's a pleasure to now open up the space for Nora, who will be leading the event today.
Gracias, Yokiñe, y gracias también a la chica.
Thank you, Jacquini, and thank you to the women from the network. Thank you for sharing this space with us today. First, I'm going to introduce myself. As Joaquini said, I'm Nora Barros. I am one of the researchers for the project as School, Territory, and Post-Conflict, and I had the privilege to be able to accompany the women from the Chaparraluna Women's Peace Network to be able to really create and build this collective memory and this process and to truly honor the memory of Dagmar Lucia. So I'd just like to introduce the text, how we will be able to create it collectively. As Eugenie said, this was a participatory research process that looked to create memory based on collaborative writing. And so, Santiago, can you please share the presentation?
Santiago, la otra.
Oh, sorry, Santiago, it's the other, it's a PowerPoint. Can you please share that?
No, tranquilo, no, yo te envié unos correos y en el correo.
I sent you some emails, and there were 3 presentations, the one with the network and our presentation. Do you have that there?
Bueno, mientras solucionamos como la
Well,
presentación.
as we're trying to find this presentation, I can continue talking about it. So this process was a process had 4 stages, where first we asked ourselves, what was the network? What did we want to talk about? What did we want to really tell? And what was, the aim that we were going to have kind of as the center of this research process. So there we made the decision that the place from where we wanted to tell the story was from a political space of the women's network. And that's really what's given strength and vitality and has allowed them to reconstruct women's identities, the identities of the women who are part of this women's network. So this was done in 4 different moments. As I mentioned, the first was this process of collectively thinking about what we wanted to talk about, what kind of stories, who we wanted to present them to, and how we wanted to do that. And we were able to implement different methodologies in each moment or phase of this process, as you'll be able to see in the last chapter of the book. Santiago, were you able to upload that presentation? So in the first stage, we used a symbolic drawing, our memory of the places and spaces and people with whom we were sharing this experience. And that's where kind of a narrative began to arise, how we had met, how we became friends, and how the women that we were accompanying over the years began to create these relationships. And so there's all these stories and memories and places began to arise. And that's how this narrative of how the network was constructed began to arise, because it was something that was very important that the women of Southern Tolima were able to organize with a peace focus. In the second phase, we began to really start writing these stories, having these different writing exercises, while we were still exploring other ways to kind of move or stir up these different memories. So we did different group exercises. The women from the network decided how to divide themselves up, the older women with the youngest women, or a group of the founders. They sat together and they asked each other questions. And we also were able to work on the creation of timelines using the network's archive. Beyond a chronological timeline, it was able to really recognize different important moments, whether they were personal problems or threats or intensification of the armed conflict, or the different challenges that the women had to confront. Also, the landmarks, the achievements, the moments of happiness. And so this timeline, besides being a chronological timeline, it really allowed us to construct this narrative of what we had been over time. And then in one of the last phases, we were able to make cartographies of the body to really recognize our body territory as a place where we project our struggles. And that's where we began to hear these narrative of how these different activities from the network were transformed maternity as woman leader, how it changed our personal project of being a mother or a wife or a daughter or an activist. So we hear the story, for example, that there's an attempt to the political focus of how mothers suffered, and how in this process, they were able to transform how women are seen and the role of women. So that's a very brief overview of how we carried out or constructed this book. We also created a small editorial committee that allowed us to read through the book again, to review it. That we did this during the quarantine, during the lockdown, and sometimes we'd start at 6 p.m. and we continue until 10 p.m. because it was the only time that we had to work. And so for over a 3-month period, we were reading together, we were writing, rewriting, adjusting, and through this process, we were able to create the book. And so with that, I'd like to once again open a space for the women from the network so they can kind of open up what we're going to hear about the different chapters of the book. My name is Zoraida Montes. I'm one of the co-founders of the network. I'm currently the finance coordinator. So around the ends of 2018 and beginning of 2019, the Chaparralunas Peace Women's Network, with support, received an invitation from the University of Ibagué and the University of Anglia Eurica Educativa to be a part of the project School, Territory, and Post-Conflict. We accepted that invitation very happily, not just because of the project that we've been carrying out with the University of Ibagué, but we were also motivated by this group of researchers that proposed a reflection on our experiences, our local knowledge, our resistance strategies, and our political focus on peace in our territories, both amid the peace conflict and after the conflict. And for us, as women, despite the violence, but gender-based violence, which is taking place not just in our homes with private spaces, but also in our territory, we have been able to publicly position this issue. What we are most interested was the subtitle of this project, which is creating or building peace, a peace culture in Southern Tolima. And that's our really challenge, our day-to-day work as an organization, from our private spaces, with our family, also with our friends, and specifically with our sons and daughters, and in public spaces, carrying out political advocacy from our agendas, positioning women as peace builders, people who are strengthening our territory, identity, community, and not just as mothers or wives, as housewives or care providers, but these are focuses that look to transform the territory and build a peace culture that can re-signify how we see power, the identity of the people of Southern Tolima. That we are not, this is not just the home of guerrilla members, but also this is really the home of peasants who are resilient and strong, specifically the historical role that we have been assigned as women in the countryside. And that's why this project really motivated us to connect more deeply with our own personal and collective history, because oftentimes, the rush of all of our activities in the day-to-day and the workload doesn't allow us to take the time to investigate and to look into the important work and activities of our colleagues, such as Cristina Sala, Monica Alvarez, Nora Barros, Inconio Rodriguez, who allowed us to really open up a space and to facilitate different ways to remember our body, our emotions, and our feelings. And it allowed us to meet, to sit together, and to recognize the lessons we have learned, the strategy we have to remain in the territory, how we have survived over the last 17 years of social work for women and territorial peace. And that's where our interest arose to build this collective memory as an organization. This was a specific interest of our colleague Dagmar Lucia Hernandez Peña, who today accompanied us from the other side. She was always interested in leading this process to develop this book, and we present it today honoring her memory. We will never forget her legacy, her struggle, the lessons we learned from her, and the love that she shared with us, and these dreams that were more than anything collective dreams, dreaming of a strong organization, a large organization that would provide options for work, for life, for knowledge and wisdom for many women and youth in the territory and hopefully in the entire world, if that is possible. And now, Maria Jimena, I think you will share.
Gracias, Zoraida, por darnos esa bella introducción.
Thank you, Zoraida, for that beautiful introduction. Now I believe that the women were going to talk about how they organized the book, how many chapters it has, and they will read some excerpts from the book itself.
Sí. Nuestro libro tiene 7 capítulos.
Yes, our book has 7 chapters. The first chapter is called The Call, Time to Organize, where we narrate the moment when we met each other and the events that led us to the idea of creating a political network that would allow us to rise up and make an impact. The second chapter is Let's Be a Network, where we explain why we decided to establish ourselves as the network, why we decided to use this concept and not others. This is really where the network arose. The third chapter is a tribute to the women who participated in this process and who wanted to tell their personal stories. And their stories are accompanied by a timeline that reflects the obstacles, milestones, people, and the whole process of alliances that we have carried out as part of our journey over the last 20 years. In chapter 4, this is a very important chapter that's called Transforming Fear, where we talk about how together we were able to manage the threats, obstacles, and fear that constantly arose throughout this political process. The fifth chapter, Gloria will talk about this chapter. So that it's called How Were We Able to Persist? And it describes the strategies we implemented to sustain the organizational fabric for over 20 years. Chapter 6 is called A Network Woven for the Benefit of the Collective, Contributions to Territorial Peace based on Sisterhood, Collective Resistance, and Social Justice. This is our chapter of conclusions, where we narrate how, from a place of love, union, and understanding among women, that is to say, based on sisterhood, we were able to activate this political project to transform our territory, the people, and to build local peace. Finally, we close with a chapter that describes the methodologies used in the research process and to create this book called How Did We Do It?
Nos acabó de contar.
And Nora, our colleague Nora, she told you about this process and previously. Norita, did you want to say something now?
Chicas, sigan ustedes. Ustedes creo que
Ladies, continue. Continues. I think you're going to read some of the fragments that you chose to share, right? Yes, Norita. How are you all doing? Warm greetings for all of you. This is the beautiful book that we were able to write. I'm going to read a fragment of the book for you all, which says the following. And it says that this book was created with a lot of love, passion, and enthusiasm. For that reason, we dedicate it to the new generation of young women and men who have joined the network to grow alongside it, to our daughters, sons, granddaughters, and grandsons, because beyond remembering what we did, we are reaffirming all that we are, our identities, our cultural diversity, what we have achieved, harvested, all our dreams, and the challenges that we have yet to conquer, so that in the future, these young women and men can write the next chapter of this process. So our principles are to replicate everything that we learn. And for that reason, we hope that this story will reach many women. We want to show that peace is built, that can be constructed from any place in the country or the world. Sometimes it seems improbable, very difficult, and full of obstacles, but it can be done when we are united and organized. That is why we hope that all women or all people who read this book can learn from our story, that they can replicate and adapt this knowledge on peace building with the hands and in the likeness of women. And that's why the Women's Network and all the women who were part of this process, we invite you to read this book, because this is a book that came out of Southern Tolima, and we were able to share it there and in many areas, and we invite you to read it. It's a very easy reading. It's a dynamic text. And I think it can be used
se te entrecortó un poco, Margie.
Margie, we weren't able to hear those last words. Your internet might have gone out just a bit. We will continue with Gloria Mendes, who one of the co-founders.
Dice Fabiola Ladindi.
So Fabiola Lalinde, she christened her battle to find her son Sirili, or tropical kingbird, because even though it's a very small bird, when the sparrowhawk, a much larger bird, arrives, it defends its chicks and territory with a very loud song until she rescues her chicks or dies trying. Fabiola Lalinde has become a symbol of the women's movement for peace in Colombia. Her insistent struggle has inspired many women and organizations to continue defending their causes and actions for peace. Therefore, national organizations such as the IMP or the Women's Initiative for Peace have adopted this concept of Operation Tropical Kingbird, or SIRI, as a national strategy to use small actions in the territories to continue defending the right to live in a country free of violence. In different moments, we, as women at the Woodwork, joined national actions within this operation, especially when we defended the Yes campaign for the 2016 peace referendum. But we have also adapted it to our organizational objectives. For us, Operation Siridi has meant organizing marches to demand our rights and manage resources or support at specific times. For example, when we needed to legalize the network at the Chamber of Commerce, or when seeking support from schools and universities so we could study. When activating the Women and Gender Consultative Council in the municipality of Chaparral, among others. Currently, it signifies continuing to persist so that our new voices, proposals, and projects have a place, are taken into account by institutions that make decisions. Can you hear me? Sorry, the internet's not very good today. No, yeah, we can hear you. So fragment 3, we want to say the following. When society teaches women to live with fear and we're still to be silent about it. Inhabiting the street, politics, home, and work means confronting many fears, like being judged, discriminated against, or abused for having been born in a woman's body. These fears are heightened for us because we live in a rural context marked by deep-seated sexism, but also by situations of armed violence and state abandonment. When we started the network, we felt that living in fear was normal. It was so embedded in our daily lives that we were prevented from seeing a lot of the violence we experienced. However, breaking our silence and allowing ourselves to open up in spaces of trust to talk about the fear, tensions, and difficulties we experience has been key for facing and overcoming them. These feelings ceased to be a personal matter and became a matter for collective work and learning from the Chaparral Women's Peace Network. Thank you. This is the fragment that I'd like to share. And so this is whether or not having coffee or not sustains the organization. For this is a metaphor that speaks to our interest in working for the collective well-being, regardless of the economic resources that are available. This does not mean that we believe that it's not necessary to have resources to execute projects. What we want to make clear is that the organization should not fall apart because it has no funding. It is also important to tell women that we are not interested in enriching ourselves personally. Many of them invite us to their rural communities and tell us, come and give us a training. We don't have a way to pay you, but we will make some masato and some empanadas. We'll make snacks and we can sell them and we'll give you the profit for your return fare. And we will be there contributing as much as we can to women's initiatives in rural areas because we know how hard it is for them. That is what we did in the network. We spent almost 15 years just scraping by, organizing, knocking on many doors. We slept in very elegant hotels because of the invitations we received, but also in hammocks in many rural communities and wherever we were invited. All this effort was rewarded 5 years ago when we managed to rent an office and develop our objectives as an organization through projects, which has constantly challenged us to formulate and manage them. In this way, what has created the network's foundation has been the conviction to work to transform women's realities through the redistribution and generation of knowledge, strengthening of associative initiatives, training rights, and political advocacy, reiterate that the important resources in all of this has been women in our wisdom and the time that we have dedicated to the organizations.
Bueno, chicas, muchas gracias.
Ladies, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing these beautiful fragments from the book, which I think has been a great way to really tempt everyone and get them interested and excited to read the book, which is called Woven, the Collective Memory of the Chaparraluna Women's Peace Network. This is a book that's both in Spanish and in English. You can find it on the webpage. We will share the link in the Facebook chat. So I'm going to take advantage now to thank all the women, but also to thank Penelope Broman. I hope I'm saying your name right. And it's a pleasure to have her. We're very excited to have her accompanying us today. And we are excited to listen to her words today. Professor Penelope works at the University of East Anglia. She's an independent consultant for more than many years of experience working to carry international development projects, and she is specialized in working with organizations to address and to support the vindication process with women and with gender equality. She's recognized as a strong defender of writing as a tool for reflection and a tool for change. So I think she'll be happy to hear how writing has been a way to create memory in this case. And she leads courses on gender and organizational initiatives in the East Anglia University. And her focus is determined by her experience with NGOs and communities in Africa and Asia, and she's currently working in a project to address violence against women in Ethiopia, Madagascar, and Cameroon. And so, Professor Penelope, thank you so much for being with us today. And I'd like to open up the space for you. It's a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me okay.
Sí, te escuchamos, profe.
Yes, we can hear you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very, very much for this invitation. It's really just been such a pleasure to read your beautiful book, and even more now to see the people who make up the book. I think your book is beautiful. I think it's inspiring. And I know that it is for the world. It's not just for your communities. It's not just for Colombia, but it's for everywhere. So really a huge congratulations to you all for the enormous amount of work that you have put into this publication. Really, congratulations. I've been very pleased to see you waving the book, holding it up, because it looks even more beautiful, of course, than on the screen. It's really a labor of love and passion and commitment. And I think it's truly, truly wonderful. And I say this because I know from my work how difficult it is to stop protesting, stop your activities, and to really value writing, remembering, pulling all your stories together. It's something that very often organizations that I work with want to do, they would like to do, but it's difficult to create the time and the space. So I also want to commend all the people involved in this project who've carved out the critical time for you to pause and reflect. So really, it's hugely impressive. So when I was asked to think about a few things to say, it was on two parts. One, the contribution to the world, and two, my impressions of the book. So in relation to the contributions to the world, I think there are many aspects, and I'm just going to pick out those that really speak to me because of my experience of working with individuals and groups and organizations in situations of conflict, in situations of transformation. You heard from the introduction that I've worked in South Africa. I've worked in South Africa for many decades, and so been involved in supporting organizations from a period of apartheid to anti-apartheid, so moving through from conflict to a democracy. So the research process is very impressive. It's a conceptual understanding of how to transform power. You are addressing power, and that's why it is so difficult and challenging personally for yourselves, for your families, for your communities, because you started this network in a context of conflict, and you are working to build peace. What I was very impressed by is the methodology, that the research process is participatory. It's about the participation of people across different communities. As you say, so many different types of women are involved in the process, in the project, and also different university people as well. So you're crossing academics and community, and really you're all in this project on the same page, which is just fantastic. So the way that you're working is challenging forms of knowledge, and you're involved in the knowledge making together as equals. The other thing that I was very struck by was the process of putting down your story of the memory of the whole 20 years started with each of you as an individual. It started with you yourself. So you had to respond to the questions: who am I in the context of the network? Who have I been? Where am I? How did I get here? Where am I going? So in terms of feminist understanding of how transformation takes place, it starts with the personal, it starts with the I. And this links to your reflective practice. So what has been central in this project has been the telling of your stories, the power of writing, to increase the visibility of your own experiences and to hear the voices of women. But as you explained very well in this presentation today, in the launch of your beautiful book, it's not about any one group of women. It's about a whole range of different voices. And I was just jumping to your logo. I was very struck by your logo. I think it's fantastic, the intergenerational message that it's giving, that it's a place for women of all ages and all backgrounds to be involved. Collaborative writing, it's challenging, and I can imagine you spent many long hours in the process of writing your stories, in the editing, and you've produced a beautiful publication. And that in itself is a huge thing to celebrate. But the process itself, I'm sure each of you on the editorial board, those of you writing the stories, those of you pulling it together, it's been collaborative. You've learned from each other. you've pushed each other to understand, what do you mean by that word? What do you mean? Haven't you forgotten about something? Didn't that happen then? So it's been a very dynamic process. So as Nora said in the introduction, I'm a big advocate of writing because I think when you write down what's important to you, to your family, to your community, to the peace building. You don't know what's going to be on the blank page, but what comes onto the blank page is the most important things in your head. The methodology has been very, very exciting, and I think it's very generalizable. I think it's something that people across the world are going to be interested in, because one of the things that's very difficult is to even know how to start, how to begin, how to build a network with all the complexity, because every time each one of you speaks, it becomes more complex in my head. It started off with 8 schools, 9 organizations, then you mentioned 25 grassroots organizations. It's very complex. And so how you bring it all together through your methodology is really important. And I think that's something that people in South Africa, in the places where I'm working now, Ethiopia, Madagascar, Cameroon, India, they're all going to be interested in the how. How did you make this happen? So when you talk about the methodology, you talk about the timeline, the body work that you've done, the group interviews, the drawings, the telling of the stories. These are really helpful tools that other people can learn from and can use. So I think it's complex because it needs to be, but you've done a really good job at describing it in a very grippable way in the publication. So people reading it will want to find out much more in detail, but you've given a very good start, particularly in the last chapter with the methodology. So the other point that I want to raise is the work that you've done around understanding how organizations are gendered, how power works in organizations. I think at the very beginning, I was reading a story about how women are in organizations, are in institutions, but what is their role? We are the secretaries. We are the secretaries. We see other people going into leadership positions. So how do you get into leadership? And you've recorded in this book some examples of how you yourselves have got into leadership. And even more exciting for me is how you've structured your network. You've decided not to have a hierarchy. You have a whole understanding about how you want to challenge power and power norms by having a structure which is flat. And you are many coordinators, which is really important because it's about you working together and building up relationships and learning from each other, whatever your initial skill set is. So I think those are the things that stand out in terms of the things that can be shared in other parts of the world. And so, of course, it's good for me that it's in English because I'm not a Spanish speaker. But of course, it's good that you have it in Spanish and English, so it's there for the world. And in this digital world that we've all learnt to access because of the pandemic, it's even more accessible. So my impressions of the book are that it's beautiful, the text, the photos, the way that it's designed. There are things to look at, there are things to read, and I can imagine in my teaching using your book, asking my students of gender studies to pick some of your stories, your fragments, engage with those, because those give us an understanding of the nuance and the depth. It's not that you just start a network and things happen from that. It has an impact on you, your husbands, your brothers, your partners, your families. I was interested to see how perhaps you're working with men as well through this process. So I think there's an enormous amount that is that can be taken from your book. Obviously, somebody like me wants to read it from cover to cover, But for other people, it might be that they want to read a particular chapter, or they want to look at the methodologies because they're excited about how you worked and how you've been able to record the history of your network. So it is indeed very, very rich. It's about women's rights. It's about the diversity of the women that you're working with. And what I was very struck with is the way that you've explained your values. So sisterhood is something that we can easily talk about. We can say that concept, sisterhood, but you've explained how that's worked for building the network, for mutual support, for growth, and really importantly, for personal self-improvement. So this, to me, I find very helpful, because sometimes in the way that we work, we can talk about these values, we can use these concepts, but we don't really explain why they're so important. And you've, in this book, helped to explain why they're so important. So I think those are the things I would like to share with you. And once again, to say that your love and passion and enthusiasm is reflected in the book and in your presentation now. And I think there are lots of spin-offs, as we'd say in English, from this presentation. And I think there's lots more work to do about how you can share it, having the book there, but also there are so many different pieces of the puzzle that you can put together in a way, which might be a short video, it might be a short presentation, but just to help people understand who haven't been through the process, understand how they can engage with the whole, but also specific aspects. So I want to just end by saying congratulations to you all. This is certainly a celebration. Your book is launched, and I feel very privileged to have been part of it. And it's come alive for me through your presentations, through your singing, through your verbal presentations. And I just congratulate you for making the time, because you could easily have just kept going with your building, your peace building, your education, all the work you're doing, and thinking we don't have time to sit, write and reflect. But I think it's an example of where the power of reflection is evident for you as individuals, for you as a network. And now you're in a position to share that with the world, to guide other people, inspire other people. So huge congratulations, and thank you very much for asking me to be part of this launch of your beautiful book. Thank you.
No, profesora Penélope, muchas gracias también a usted por tomarse el tiempo y la dedicación.
Thank you so much, Professor Penelope. Thank you so much for reading in detail the work that we're so happy to share today. And also, thank you for this aim of sharing, of replicating and providing feedback for this story. And that's really the interest that we have to be able to establish bridges and peace fabrics that go beyond Chaparral, beyond Colombia, that really can contribute to women's efforts to build peace internationally. I'm not sure if the women from the network, they want to say anything to Professor Penelope in relation to her reflections and how she has interpreted the text that we wrote. Do you want to say anything?
Gracias, profesora Penélope.
Thank you so much, Professor Penelope. We're happy you were able to read our book and to help us to share our book beyond the network in Tolima. We have always worked hard on what is understanding the role of women, a role that goes beyond women from a social science perspective, and seeing how important women's participation is in different municipal spaces, in different decision-making spaces, but also within our organizations.
más del 80% son dirigidas por mujeres.
So more than 80% of the organizations that are part of our network are led by women. And the board of directors are made up by women. And we do have, as you said, a horizontal organization. That's why we're all important. We all have different skills and talents. And when we bring them together, that's what makes us strong. And this is something we can then share with our young people. And we can share this organization and involve them so that it can continue. And also so that the young men, they can be a part of our process. We talk about the women's network, but we also include our sons, our husbands, because this is a process that includes all of the entities when we're talking about truly building territorial peace. Hopefully someday you can come to Colombia, you can visit us, and maybe we can go and visit you, and we can exchange our experiences to be able to continue growing as an organization. Thank you again so much, Professor Penelope, for reading our book. And thank you to everyone who's been a part of this project, Nora, Iconi, the interpreter, the translator, and everyone who has had a role. And hopefully we'll all be able to contribute a little bit to share this book so that it can reach many different hands. So thank you, Professor. Thank you, everyone. Our doors are always open. And so I'm going to add my voice in the invitation from the women from the network. Hopefully we'll be able to continue getting to know each other and rewriting our story collectively. Professor, would you like to say anything? Professor Penelope, did you want to make any last comments?
No, but just thank you very much for your comments back to me, and for adding a bit more detail. So every time you speak, there's a bit more information, which is fantastic. But I've never been to your part of the world, so that would be very thrilling if one day that is possible. But yeah, thank you very much. And I just want to wish you all very well with this. And I know that I will be able to send the digital copy, the PDF, around to my networks, which will be great. And so I think that's what I can also kind of commit to in this process, because I know there are some people who will be very interested immediately in receiving this. So if that's okay by you, I can send the PDF off to people who I know will be interested, and I'm sure you will keep me informed through Yekoni about how you're getting on, and possible sort of links for more information about the project and the book and how you're taking it forward. So thank you very much.
No. Gracias a ti, profesora, por tu interés de sumarte.
Thank you so much, Professor. Thank you for adding your voice and hands to replicate this process in this book. And so the digital times also allow us to be in contact, even though we're not in the same physical space. So I'd like to reiterate the invitation to continue thinking and collectively investigating with the women in Colombia, in southern Tolima, and also the people who are listening to us today. Hopefully you'll be able to read the book. You can visit the webpage of the project. You'll not only find the book, but also participatory video that reflects the process, how we made the book, and it has subtitles in English, this video, and also the different products and posters and maps that have arisen out of this research process with the other organizations in southern Tolima. So we thank you all. Thank you for sharing your time. I'd like to really thank Kath who's taken her time to do the interpretation. Without her, this space would not have been possible. Also, Pablo Garcia, thank you. She did the design of the project. And also Yukina and Professor Penelope and everyone else who's taken the time to listen to us and has been with us today. Hopefully you have a beautiful day, a beautiful afternoon or evening. And we hope to be continue to be in contact to continue weaving together.